The dining room lights were too bright for the kind of conversation that unfolded that night. Steam rose from the roast I'd cooked, curling like smoke over a fire I hadn't meant to start. My name is Helena Brooks. I'm 66 years old, and during my daughter's engagement dinner, I heard her fiancé and his parents mock her in Arabic, assuming I couldn't understand a word. I smiled. I poured the wine. But what they didn't know was I'd spent 10 years in Dubai, listening. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers, it comes from the people sitting right across your dinner table, smiling, clinking glasses, and thinking you'll never understand what they just said. When I was 48, I took what was supposed to be a 3-month assignment in Dubai. It lasted 10 years. People thought it was the money that kept me there, or the prestige of being the only woman at the negotiation table for Meridian Gulf Energy. But the truth was simpler. I stayed because I found peace in the precision of strategy. Every word, every pause, every tone, every nod had weight. In those rooms, silence wasn't weakness, it was a weapon. My husband David used to tease me for it. "You're not just negotiating contracts, Helena," he'd say. "You're negotiating how people see you." He wasn't wrong. At home, I was the one who made sure everything worked: the bills, the meals, the future. At work, I was the one who noticed what no one else did: the twitch of a jaw before someone lied, the half-second delay before an interpreter softened a sentence. I learned to pretend I didn't understand, and that pretending gave me control. I didn't know it then, but that skill-quiet observation would become my armor years later. In Dubai, I met a secretary named Nora. She was in her 60s with wrists full of silver bangles and eyes that looked like she'd already seen the world end twice. She was the one who started teaching me Arabic first, with words written on post-it notes stuck to my computer monitor, then in conversations over bitter coffee that tasted like dust and cardamom. She used to say you learn a language not to speak but to hear what people hide. I laughed back then. But I remembered every word. The work consumed me. I'd wake to the hum of the AC and the faint call to prayer echoing across the city. Sometimes, when the desert winds blew, sand would sneak through the window frames, coating my desk in a thin gold film. I'd brush it away before the meetings, pretending not to notice how it glittered under the light. I liked that the illusion of control even over the dust. When I finally came home after 10 years, everything had changed except me. David's health had declined. My daughters had grown up. Avery was already working at Cambridge, writing papers about literature and emotional intelligence. Dana was in law school, sharp as a blade, always calculating. They loved me, but they didn't know me anymore. I'd missed too many Thanksgivings, too many birthdays. There was a distance. A polite affection built on scheduled calls and practical updates. When David passed away, both girls flew home for the funeral, and for a moment, I thought the gap would close. But grief, I learned, doesn't unite people. It just makes everyone quieter in their own corners. That winter, I found a letter David had left in the piano bench. It was written in his steady, looping script. "Don't let anyone rearrange your life, Helena, not even out of love." I folded that letter so many times the paper started to soften at the edges. I kept it in my wallet like a talisman. Avery was always the softer one, her father's temperament. She saw beauty in small things, the way snow fell over street lamps, the smell of books. She wanted the world to be kind, and when it wasn't, she convinced herself it just needed understanding. Dana, on the other hand, took after me. She questioned everything. She distrusted charm. When the two of them argued, Avery would cry, Dana would win. The first time Avery brought a boyfriend home, Eli a poet with a man bun and a collection of unpaid parking tickets, I kept my distance. I didn't need to pry. I just watched. One evening, while clearing the table, I caught a glimpse of his phone screen, her name followed by a dollar amount in a message thread. I said nothing. The next week, Avery found out he'd been borrowing money from her for months. She cried for 3 days, then swore she'd never fall for the wrong man again. I wanted to believe her. When she met Rami years later, she introduced him like she was introducing a miracle. "Mom, he's different. He listens." He did listen too well. His pauses were measured, his compliments crafted. He had the kind of charm that slides under your guard and makes you think you're being seen, not watched. The first time we met, I noticed how he mirrored Avery's gestures, the tilt of her head, the way she folded her hands when she spoke. That kind of mirroring isn't affection, it's calibration. Still, I didn't say anything. I'd learned that warning a grown daughter about her choices only made her defend them harder. So I smiled and I waited. One evening when he came for dinner, I asked him about his work. He said he was finishing his PhD in international relations. His accent softened the words, made them sound more impressive than they were. But when I asked where he was studying, he paused a fraction of a second too long before answering Northeastern. That tiny hesitation was a crack, and I made a mental note of it. Dana didn't trust him either, though she hid it better. He's too polished, she told me once, her voice low. Like a guy who rehearses being nice. I laughed. You sound like me. I learned from the best, she said. For a while, things were calm. Avery glowed in that way people do when they believe they've found safety. They announced their engagement over dinner, an intimate affair with candles and wine. The ring, a flawless diamond in a vintage setting, looked expensive but not ostentatious. I congratulated them, kissed my daughter's cheek, and stayed quiet when Dana's jaw tightened. It wasn't until later that I noticed the ring was lab-grown and that the setting was identical to one I'd seen years ago in a pawnshop window. But that, too, I kept to myself. Not yet. I didn't know it back then, but every silence I held would eventually echo. That autumn, as the leaves turned copper outside my window, I received a message from Avery. Mom, can we have a family dinner next week? I want you to meet Rami's parents over Zoom. They're old-fashioned, but they want to thank you for raising me. Old-fashioned. I smiled at the word. When the night came, I set the table with the same dishes I'd used for David's retirement dinner. White porcelain, thin gold rim. I poured wine for everyone, even though Rami's family didn't drink. I wanted the evening to feel civil, warm American. But warmth, I'd learned, can be a kind of camouflage. As the laptop camera flickered on, I saw 3 faces appear, Rami's parents sitting on a velvet couch in Amman. They smiled polite and distant. We exchanged pleasantries, compliments, all through Rami's translation. Avery glowed. Dana watched silently. Then the conversation shifted to Arabic. At first it was harmless phrases about travel and family. Then, slowly it turned sharper. A word about status. A laugh about plain but wealthy. A comment about how easy it is to win a visa through marriage. They thought I didn't understand. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even blink. I just smiled and refilled my glass. And that's when the past. The years in Dubai, the lessons from Nora, the letter in the piano, came back all at once, like music building to its refrain. I had been silent long enough. I didn't know it then, but that dinner would be the last time my daughter saw me as just her mother, and the first time she'd see who I really was. The night after that dinner, I barely slept. The voices from the call kept looping in my head. The father's tone, the mother's laugh, Rami's half-translated flattery. They thought they were clever. But arrogance always leaks through language. In the early hours, I found myself at the piano. The bench creaked. When I sat down, same sound it had made for 20 years. I hadn't played since David died. The keys felt cold under my fingers like shaking hands with a ghost. I played the same Bach prelude I used to practice when the girls were small. Every note was muscle memory. But somewhere between the melody and the silence, I realized something. They weren't just mocking me. They were mocking Avery's trust, and that was unforgivable. I needed to understand who this man really was. So the next morning, I started small. I asked Dana to have lunch with me at Rachel's Corner, the cafe down the street, where everyone in Cambridge gossiped in low tones, pretending not to. Rachel herself was behind the counter, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Dana arrived late as usual, tossing her coat onto the chair. "You've got that look," she said. "The one where you're about to ruin someone's career or marriage." I smiled, just trying to protect your sister from hers. I told her about the dinner, about what I'd heard. She leaned back, frowning. "Are you sure? Maybe it's a misunderstanding." "Cultural difference. I lived 10 years in the Gulf," I said quietly. "I know the difference between a joke and contempt." Rachel came over to refill our coffees. "You mean that fiancé of Avery's?" "He comes here every morning," she said casually. "Always sits outside, facing the street, checking his phone. Yesterday he met a woman, tall, blonde, kind of out of place. Left together." Dana and I exchanged a look. That was how it began, not with confrontation, but with curiosity. I didn't tell Avery. She was busy planning the engagement party, buying flowers, posting filtered photos of her ring. The caption read, "Forever starts here." I scrolled past it and closed the app. Instead, I watched. I waited. I let Rami hang himself with his own behavior. He started coming over more often, too often. Always polite, always helpful. He'd fix the Wi-Fi carry groceries offer to pick Avery up from work. But little things began to slip through: a message in Arabic on his phone that he hid too quickly, a late return from study group, the faint smell of unfamiliar perfume when he hugged my daughter. One evening, I invited him to dinner again. Just him, Dana, and me. Avery was grading papers late. I wanted to see how he behaved without his audience. He arrived with wine and flowers like a man rehearsing sincerity. Over the meal, Dana questioned him gently at first, then sharper. She asked about his family's business, about the investigation, rumors circulating online. He laughed them off. Just political noise, he said, waving his hand. You know how it is. Back home, enemies make stories. I watched the way his hand twitched when she said embezzlement. It was subtle, a muscle reflex, a negotiator's tell. By the end of dinner, Dana looked convinced enough, not of his innocence, but of his danger. When he left, she said quietly, "He's lying, but I can't prove it, not yet." "Then we don't rush," I said. "We build the case." It took weeks. Every detail mattered. The first clue came from Avery's smart speaker, her HomePod. She had accidentally triggered the recording history setting, which saved snippets of ambient conversation. One night, while she was out, Dana checked. A few lines were clear, Rami's voice calm, low, plain but wealthy. Then, laughter followed by the phrase, 2 months till papers. It wasn't enough to accuse him publicly, but it was enough to confirm our suspicions. The second clue came from Rachel again. She'd captured a silhouette on her outdoor camera one night. Someone unlocking Avery's building door using an access card long after Avery had gone to bed. The image wasn't sharp, but the man's shoes had a distinct saw-edged sole, the kind of fashion statement Rami prided himself on. The third clue appeared as irony, the engagement ring. Avery had left it on the coffee table one night after washing dishes. Dana picked it up and turned it under the lamp. Something about it seemed off. The reflection was too sterile, the light too white. She took it to a jeweler the next morning. "Lab-grown," he said. "In this setting, pawnshop resale, not vintage." Piece by piece, the facade cracked. Still, I stayed quiet. My daughters both inherited my stubbornness. If I pushed too soon, Avery would turn against me. She needed to see the truth herself. I found my chance in early December. Avery had invited Rami to her department's holiday gala at the faculty club. "Mom, you'll come, won't you?" she asked, all bright eyes and excitement. "It'll mean a lot if you support us." I smiled. "Of course, darling." The night of the event, the air was sharp with cold. The street lamps turned the snow into falling dust. I arrived early, wearing the gray blazer I used to wear to oil negotiations, not glamorous, but commanding. Ambassador Al-Rashid was on the guest list, an old sparring partner from my years abroad. Seeing his name there made me curious. Inside, I watched Rami move through the crowd. He was good, charming. He shook hands, made jokes, told small lies about his upcoming dissertation. Avery beamed beside him, proud. Then I saw him slip his phone from his pocket, glance at the screen, and walk out to the patio. I followed at a distance. He wasn't alone. The blonde woman Rachel had described was there, Lottie. Whitmore, daughter of a senator. I recognized her immediately. She was whispering something urgent, leaning close. When she saw me, her face paled. Later that night, I found her waiting outside the coat room. "Mrs. Brooks," she said quietly, "you don't know me, but you should be careful. Rami isn't who he says he is. He's using your daughter." Her voice trembled. I believed her instantly. By the time I returned home, I knew this wasn't just a bad romance. It was manipulation, systemic, strategic. The kind of play I'd seen 100 times in boardrooms dressed as diplomacy. The next morning, I called Ambassador Al-Rashid. "Helena Brooks," he said warmly when he picked up. "It's been years. What brings you back to the battlefield?" "A man who doesn't know who he's dealing with," I replied. We met that afternoon in his office. Over bitter Arabic coffee, I told him everything. He listened, nodded once, and said, "Then we must be careful. Men like him don't go down with one strike. They need to collapse under the weight of their own arrogance." His words echoed my thoughts exactly. That evening I wrote in my journal, "Do not confront him. Let him build the stage, then pull the curtain." I didn't know it back then, but the curtain would rise sooner than I planned, and when it did, it would bring down everyone pretending to act with love. It started subtly, as all betrayals do. A text message unanswered, a nervous glance, a hesitation too long to ignore. Avery had begun to change, nothing dramatic, just little flickers. She was tired, more often distracted, guarding her phone like a teenager. When I asked how the wedding planning was going, she'd say, "Fine, Mom, everything's fine," and flash that brittle smile people use when they're trying to convince themselves. I knew the signs. I'd negotiated with men like Rami my whole career, men who thrived on soft power and emotional control. I could see him tightening the leash one small act at a time. One morning, I dropped by Avery's apartment with fresh croissants. Rami answered the door, shirtless, towel around his neck, like he owned the place. His surprise flashed across his face for half a second before he smoothed it away. "Mrs. Brooks," he said warmly, "you're early." "It's 10:30, I replied, brushing past him. "Early for what?" Avery appeared in the hallway, still in her robe. She looked startled, then embarrassed, then angry at herself for both. "Mom, you could have called." "I did," I said, and set the pastries on the counter. The air between us crackled. Rami reached for his phone, a gesture too casual to be innocent. He typed something quickly, screen tilted away from me. A habit, a tell. I stayed only 10 minutes, but when I left, I walked slower down the hall, thinking of how his smile never reached his eyes. That night, Dana called. "He's been at Avery's for 3 nights straight," she said. "Did she say they're living together?" "No," I replied, "but she will. That's how control works. You don't ask permission. You create comfort and then call it normal." We met again at Rachel's cafe, our unofficial command post. Rachel had that look, half gossip, half concern. "You'll want to see this," she said, sliding her phone across the counter. The screen showed security footage from the alley behind her shop. A timestamp, too, 17 a.m. A tall man entering Avery's building, hood up, shoulders hunched against the cold. The outline was unmistakable, Rami's gait, his shoes with the serrated sole. "What's he doing there?" that late, Dana asked. Rachel hesitated. He left 20 minutes later carrying something. Looked like a small box. When I showed the footage to Avery, she brushed it off. "Mom, you're making it sound worse than it is. He probably just forgot something." "Forgot something," Dana muttered. "Like boundaries." "Dana, stop," Avery snapped. "You both need to stop treating me like a child." It wasn't anger in her voice. It was fear. The kind of fear that comes from realizing your safety depends on the very person you're defending. That night I sat alone at the piano again. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I pressed one key, then another. A slow, deliberate rhythm. That's when the doorbell rang. It was Lottie Whitmore. Her coat was soaked from the sleet, her eyes rimmed red. She looked younger up close, less like a senator's daughter and more like a frightened girl. "I shouldn't be here," she said, "but I thought you should know Rami's desperate. He's running out of time. His student visa expires in 7 weeks. If he doesn't marry Avery, he's done." She handed me a folder, email screenshots, a printed ICE notification. I flipped through each page, another piece of confirmation. "Why tell me?" I asked quietly. "Because he's done the same thing before," she whispered. "To someone else. In D.C., she tried to report him, but her parents made it disappear. My father." She swallowed. "My father helped him. They didn't want a scandal before re-election." Her words sat heavy in the room. When she left, I poured myself a glass of scotch and opened my laptop. I typed his name into every database I could access, academic, immigration, alumni networks. By 2 a.m., I had enough fragments to see the outline of his truth. He wasn't finishing a PhD. He wasn't affiliated with Northeastern. He was registered for one online certificate course under a different name. Everything else, resume letters, references, fabricated. The next day, I went to see Ambassador al-Rashid. He listened quietly, then smiled in that slow, knowing way. "You've already won," he said. "He just doesn't know it yet." "But Avery doesn't see it," I replied. "She will," he said, "when the truth comes from his own mouth." He was right. It needed to come from Rami, from his arrogance, from the moment he believed himself untouchable. So I waited again. Let the mask slip naturally. Let his pride do the damage. 2 days later, he gave me the opportunity. Avery had invited me to dinner, just family, she said. I arrived early and helped set the table. The place smelled of cinnamon and roasted chicken. She was trying so hard to make it perfect. Rami came home late, his mood electric, confident. During dinner, he toasted to new beginnings and squeezed Avery's hand. Then midway through dessert, his phone buzzed. He excused himself and walked into the hallway. A moment later, Avery's laptop, still open from work, lit up with a message preview in Arabic. It was from his father. 2 months till papers. I didn't touch the computer. I didn't need to. I just looked at Avery and she looked at me. For the first time, she saw what I saw. Her face went pale. Her hand trembled as she set down her fork. That was the moment something broke, not between her and me, but between her and the illusion she'd built. And once a woman like Avery sees truth, there's no unseeing it. The silence after that dinner was suffocating. Avery excused herself early, claiming she wasn't feeling well, and went to bed. Rami stayed up pretending to scroll through his phone on the couch, his eyes darting toward the hallway every few minutes. I watched him from the kitchen, my hands steady as I rinsed the plates. I'd spent a lifetime studying silence. the pauses people filled with their lies. When I finally spoke, it was soft. "You must be tired." He smiled without warmth, just thinking. "About the future," he shrugged. "About the wedding." "Of course," I said. 2 months till the papers. The words hung between us. For a moment he froze. Then he forced a chuckle too late to hide the tension in his jaw. "Excuse me." I dried my hand slowly. "That's what your father said, wasn't it?" He stood, a flicker of irritation flashing in his eyes. "You misunderstood." "Oh, I understood perfectly." He didn't answer. He just stared, then smiled again, wider this time, the kind of smile men use when they're recalculating. "You're impressive, Mrs. Brooks," he said softly. "But maybe a little paranoid." "Maybe," I said. "But paranoia has kept me alive longer than trust ever did." He laughed once, low and humorless. "You think you're protecting her, but you're only making her miserable." Then he walked out, coat in hand, and I let him. That night I sent a single text to Dana. "It's time." The next morning, she met me at my house with 2 cups of coffee and a drive full of evidence. She'd spent the night assembling what we had: the video from Rachel's camera, the lab-grown diamond receipt, the smart speaker logs, the AS record from Lottie, and the screenshots of Rami's fake credentials. We sat at my dining table, morning light spilling across the wood like interrogation lamps. "Do we take this to Avery now?" Dana asked. "Not yet," I said. "He'll deny everything. He'll twist it. We need him to expose himself publicly, somewhere he can't hide behind charm." Dana leaned back, studying me. "You already have a plan, don't you?" I smiled faintly. "Always." Later that day, I went to Avery's apartment, pretending nothing was wrong. I found her curled on the couch, laptop closed, face pale. She looked like a person who'd lost faith in something invisible. "Mom," she said quietly, "if it's true, if he's using me, I don't know what to do." "You don't need to decide now," I told her. "Just listen, observe, don't react." She nodded, and for the first time in years, she trusted me completely. 3 days later, the escalation began. Rami called to say he wanted to talk things through. He showed up at my door with a bouquet of lilies, white, dramatic funereal. He spoke in half apologies, insisting that everything had been taken out of context. When I didn't respond, he changed tone from defensive to wounded. "I love her," he said. "You think you're helping, but you're destroying what she has." "Love built on lies isn't love," I replied. He flinched, then leaned in slightly. "You can't control her forever, Mrs. Brooks. She's not one of your contracts." I looked at him evenly. "And you're not one of my equals." That broke his mask for a second, the eyes cold, the charm gone. He left without another word. Within hours, Avery called me crying. He said, "You hate him because he's foreign, because he's not good enough for our family." I closed my eyes. Did you believe him? She hesitated. "I don't know." That uncertainty stung more than anger, but I didn't argue. People have to reach the truth themselves. Forcing it only pushes them back into the lie. That evening, Dana stopped by again. "He's panicking," she said. "I've got screenshots of him messaging Lottie, threatening to expose her father if she talks. The senator's office is trying to suppress it quietly. That means we have leverage." "Good," I said. "Then we wait for the gala." Because I knew Rami. His ego wouldn't allow him to back down quietly. He'd try to reclaim the narrative, to humiliate me in public, to prove himself untouchable. And that would be his mistake. The next week passed like a loaded gun, everyone smiling, everyone pretending not to hear the ticking. Avery went through the motions of wedding planning. Rami showered her with gestures that looked sincere, from the outside and hollow up close. Dana and I built our case in silence, file by file. The night before the faculty club gala, I found the letter from David, again still folded in my wallet. "Don't let anyone rearrange your life, Helena. Not even out of love." I read it 3 times, then slipped it back into place. The next day, I woke early, ironed my blazer, tied my hair back, and put on the small pearl earrings David had given me when Avery was born. They'd been my armor once. They would be again. Before I left, Dana handed me a flash drive. "Everything's on here, timestamps, audio, video receipts. You sure you want to do this in public?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because he'll underestimate me there." She smiled, proud and wary all at once. "Then let's make him wish he'd never met a woman who listens before she speaks." That night, the game would end. But Rami still thought he was winning. He had no idea that every lie he'd told was about to play back word for word, image for image, in front of the very people whose respect he craved most. And this time, it wouldn't be me who destroyed him. It would be his own voice. The night of the faculty club gala was wrapped in snow and tension. Cambridge looked almost cinematic, under the streetlights, clean, quiet, and ready for something to break. Inside, chandeliers hummed, glasses clinked, and conversations about academia filled the air. Everyone wore their politest masks. I arrived just after 7 with Dana beside me. She looked calm but alert, her eyes sweeping the crowd like a lawyer scanning a jury. Avery and Rami stood near the stage, radiant and rehearsed. His hand rested on her back. The gesture of a man pretending ownership looked like affection. "Ready," Dana whispered. "Always," I said. Ambassador Al-Rashid was already there, standing by the faculty board members. When he saw me, he raised his glass, slightly an old diplomat signal. "I'm here if needed." The evening opened with speeches. A few professors droned about the value of cross-cultural understanding. The irony wasn't lost on me. I barely heard the words. I was watching Rami's reflection in the glass of the wine cabinet. His posture was perfect, his grin faultless, but his foot tapped fast, rhythmic, betraying nerves. When the dean invited him up to share a few words about his upcoming research, I almost smiled. He hadn't been asked. He had volunteered. Of course he had. Men like him crave spotlights the way plants crave the sun. They'll burn for it if they have to. He started with a joke light and charming, and people laughed. Then he spoke about building bridges, about trust between families. I could almost taste the irony on my tongue. Avery stood to the side, pride flickering with unease. Then he said I owe much of my journey to my future mother-in-law, Mrs. Helena Brooks, who taught me resilience, patience, and the importance of forgiveness. The crowd turned to me, smiling politely. I smoothed my blazer and said, "Forgiveness is best earned, not demanded." A soft murmur rippled through the room. Rami's smile faltered. "Of course," he said smoothly. "But misunderstandings happen." "Indeed," I replied, "like pretending not to know a language while mocking your host's daughter in it." The air froze. Someone near the back coughed. Dana took a step forward and handed the flash drive to the technician near the screen. He glanced at me for confirmation. I nodded once. A moment later, the projector flickered to life. The first clip played low-quality audio from Avery's smart speaker. Rami's voice, unmistakable, saying in Arabic plain but wealthy. 2 months till papers. His mother's laugh followed, high and dismissive. Gasps echoed. The second image appeared Rachel's alley footage, timestamped 2:17 a.m. The silhouette of a tall man entering Avery's building. Then a still shot the shoes. Serrated soles. The third slide came up. The jeweler's certification, lab-grown diamond, resale origin. The receipt bore Rami's signature. And then the final blow, the ICE document and fake academic transcript with the same email address tied to both. Rami's mask cracked. "This is nonsense," he snapped, switching from charm to fury. "This is a personal attack." "An attack," Dana said coolly. "No, Mr. Haddad. This is verification." Avery looked pale but steady. She took off her engagement ring and placed it on the table between them. It hit the wood with a sound sharper than any word. Rami turned toward her. "Avery, you know me. These people are twisting everything." But she interrupted softly, almost apologetically. "I used to think so, until you proved them right." He stepped back, his breath quick and shallow. You don't know what you're doing." At that moment, Ambassador Al-Rashid's voice cut through the silence. Deep, measured, authoritative. "I do." Every head turned. He walked forward, slowly holding a paper. "I received this from my colleagues in Amman this morning. It seems Mr. Haddad once applied for an academic sponsorship under false credentials using my letterhead. Forgery. A federal offense in both countries." Rami's face drained of color. He turned toward the exit, but 2 campus security guards, warned in advance by Dana, had already stepped closer. Avery whispered, "Please just go." For a heartbeat, I thought he might lash out. But he didn't. He straightened his jacket, glanced at me, and smiled a thin, venomous smile. "You've made powerful enemies tonight, Mrs. Brooks." I held his gaze. "No. I just reminded one powerless man that women like me built the tables men like you sit at." He left without another word. The room was utterly silent. You could hear the faint hum of the heating vents, the nervous shifting of shoes on the parquet floor. Then someone started to clap. It was Al-Rashid. Slow, deliberate. A few others joined in quiet, uncertain applause, not for drama, but for clarity. I didn't feel triumph, not yet, just relief. Avery stepped toward me, tears filling her eyes. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." I reached out and touched her face. "Don't apologize for believing in love. Just learn to believe in yourself more." Dana stood beside us, one hand on Avery's shoulder. "He won't be back," she said. "No," I said, looking at the door where he'd disappeared. "But people like him always leave echoes. Let's make sure we answer them with silence." That night when I got home, I sat at my piano again. For the first time in years, I didn't play Bach. I played something new, my own composition. A melody that started soft and grew bolder, stronger, until it filled the whole room. And when the final note hung in the air, I realized. The truth, revenge didn't always roar. Sometimes it sang. The morning after the gala, Cambridge was washed in winter sunlight, too bright, too clean for the wreckage left behind. News traveled fast, in academic circles. By noon, Rami's name had been scrubbed from the university's online directory, his research portal deleted, and the whispers had already reached the Jordanian embassy. Avery stayed with me that night, silent but steady. She didn't cry. She didn't have to. Some heartbreaks burn too hot for tears, they crystallize into resolve. When she finally spoke, it was while making coffee. I should feel humiliated, she said, but I don't. I just feel done. Good, I told her. That means you're starting to heal. She smiled faintly. And you, Mom, you look lighter. Maybe I was. For years I had lived, small, retired, quiet, polite. The world had decided I was done, being sharp, strategic, relevant, and I had almost believed it. Until I had to become that woman again. Dana arrived later with an update. He's gone, she said, dropping her coat on the chair. ICE took him into custody this morning. Visa fraud, forged documents, pending deportation. They moved fast. And his family, I asked. Ambassador al-Rashid made a few calls, Dana said dryly. Turns out their contracting empire back in Jordan isn't exactly solvent. They'll be too busy fighting their own investigations to meddle here. Avery let out a shaky laugh. So it's really over. Almost, I said. There's always paperwork after a war. Dana smirked. You sound like you missed the battlefield. I met her eyes over my coffee cup. Maybe I do. That evening, after my daughters left, I sat by the window watching snow settle on the streetlights. My reflection looked older, yes, but also sharper. I opened my laptop and reread an email I'd ignored for months, an invitation from the International Women's Negotiation Network. Consultant role available. Dubai-based. Flexible schedule. I clicked reply. Before sending, I added one line at the end. Some of us never really retire. We just wait for the right fight to remind us who we are. Outside, a siren echoed, faintly swallowed by the falling snow. For the first time in years, I felt ready not just to protect, but to build again. Not from fear, but from clarity. Because revenge, I realized, isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. And mine had only just begun. If you've ever trusted the wrong person and had to rebuild yourself piece by piece, hit subscribe. Because this story isn't really about betrayal. It's about remembering what you're made of when everything breaks. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and share it with someone who needs to hear that dignity doesn't age and wisdom never fades. My name is Helena Brooks. I lost a daughter to illusion and got back 2 women stronger than I ever imagined, including myself. This story isn't over. Stay tuned. The next chapter starts soon.